Hello, and welcome to Digital Artcast, hosted by Gordon Neill. This podcast is proudly sponsored by Procreate, the most advanced painting app ever designed for a mobile device. We'll be discussing the app a little more later in the episode, as well as giving away a free copy. But for now, let's get started.
Okay, and welcome back to Digital Artcast, guys. As many times as I've said that, welcome back to Digital Artcast. It's nearly been 2 years now since I started the podcast, and one of my initial goals when I started the podcast was to interview some of my heroes, and I'm fortunate enough today to have one of them on, Mr. Scott Robertson. So thank you for joining us, Scott.
Hey, Gordon. Yeah, thanks a lot. And
Okay.
I don't know if I can live up to that now. You start me out with the
The hero status.
Yeah.
I mean, that must be something you hear a lot, and you stay humble to it, I suppose. But
Yeah, totally. As much as
But then again, you have had an influence on a lot of design concept from the last couple of years. I mean, people at this point, would probably, hopefully, know who you are. But for anyone who doesn't, just give a quick background into your history. I know it's extensive, but even just a brief summarize of who you are and what you do. So.
Sure. Yeah, I went to Art Center College of Design in the late '80s, and as an industrial designer. So I'm technically, I guess, a car designer. That's what I graduated in.
Mm-hmm.
But industrial design was always my, in my what I was educated in, the skill sets and my passion.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was April of '90 I graduated. So I'm almost 28 years out, which kind of makes me nowadays one of the senior guys in as it relates to like the entertainment world.
Yeah.
That still draws and works at the computer occasionally, that sort of thing. So it's kind of interesting to have been around. When I graduated, there were almost no concept art jobs. Like, it wasn't a viable industry. There were no programs educationally for it. And that's why if you look into the background of like senior concept art people, a lot of them came out of industrial design.
Yeah, no, I've found that has been the case because I know you just watching recently your ArtStation talk again was you talked about how the infancy of the industry, because people were saying, or people would say the jobs are saturated and the industry's saturated, but you were saying, look at the music industry, talk about saturation. So yeah, like we are still on the cusp, and I think you and a couple of the guys like Craig Mullins and that kind of forged the path for what concept art is today, really industrial design in games and movies is today. And have you found that do you still feel we're in the infancy stage? Do you think it's still a growing industry?
Yeah, I definitely think it's still growing because there's so many more platforms now. Originally there was not much in the way of platforms, and you didn't, like the games industry, nobody on the concept art was even interested in games because the low resolution of the games, nobody wanted to be involved with those doing artwork. Because that just, it doesn't look good in the end. So it didn't attract like top talent. So only the movies had the budgets and the technology to sort of realize the level of the artwork visually. And so those would be the only projects that would appeal to people.
Yeah. And I guess, I remember hearing oh no, on you go, Scott.
Oh no! Just then there came online like consoles, but then not very long ago, then there's like the iPhone came out. So now we have smartphone platforms. Then we have the tablet platform.
Yeah.
So it just keeps growing and growing.
Oh, totally. And I was just going to say that I heard a story long ago, and I think that was quite true, and I could believe it that before concepting was a real thing, the guys in the studio who could draw the best. So if it was an animator or a sound guy, if they were proficient in art, they were just given the task of basically, doing most of the art for the video game. It wasn't a specialized job, is what I'm getting at. It's only just became specialised in, I would even say, the last 6 or 7 years, maybe since 2010 even, when there was a kind of boom and the sexiness of games. They came into the realms of reality. And that
Yeah.
was, yeah,
And there's still been like, the real trend there aesthetically was to pursue photoreal, visuals,
yeah,
like all the big AAA titles. And it still is sort of the mainstream trend, which is to try and, pursue the highest quality photorealism.
mm,
There's the occasional stylized one that's, more original and
yeah,
much more sort of, I would say, stylistically in alignment with the process of doing feature animation.
yeah,
But generally speaking, it's all a sort of photoreal pursuit.
yeah,
And so a lot of that, was driven, and a lot of video game companies were driven by the engineering
yeah,
departments.
yeah,
And art was really secondary when
yeah,
those things started. Now it's become more important,
mm,
um, but
yeah.
it's still, a very much sort of software engineer driven industry.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I think even again, harking back to earlier things you talked about, where you talk about the difference between concept art and concept design. You felt there was like you touched on the animation side. You felt that there was almost two branches of design now, where you have the super photorealistic stuff and the
Yep.
animation side that is stylized. Do you see those as still separate things, or do you think there's more overlap now? Or
I think, because the industries have become more mature, I think
mm,
there's more opportunity for people to specialize.
yeah,
So in the past, you couldn't find, let's say, a singular, or it's more difficult to find a singular full-time job that was in one specific style, especially if you wanted to be freelance.
yeah,
There just wasn't enough work.
mm,
So you might have a broader skill set
yeah,
where you did kind of a little bit of everything. So you're like a better all-rounder, right?
yeah,
Like you would do some environment, but you could also help on character. You could do some props, maybe some vehicles.
yeah,
But nowadays, it's become mature enough that you could probably, you can go out and get a full-time job. Especially if you're freelance, you could actually start to specialize.
yeah,
Uh, and now I think students actually, they tend to, prioritize in their portfolio. They maybe still have good, they should always at least have good all-around skills.
yeah,
But then within that, they have their favorite subject. And that's where they're trending towards, well, I can sort of do a bit of everything to a competent level,
mm,
but I really love doing, stylized animation. And
yeah,
so, their lead out, let's say, portfolio pieces or projects
mm.
will target, trying to get that specialized job.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Yeah, and again, just going back to, coming out of Art Centre, I think even in an earlier interview you talked about the day you graduated, you set up, sorry, a studio with one of your friends at the time, to try and do industrial design freelance. What was the early days for you working in that studio as a young designer? Did you find that you were, as you talk about a general kind of all, jack of all trades, or did you aim your design kind of towards more specialized work?
No, we did, because I started a industrial design consultancy with Neville Page right
Yeah.
after we graduated,
Mhm.
like the summer of '90.
Yeah.
And we had already picked up a couple of freelance clients doing internships while we were at Art Center.
Right. Yeah.
So we sort of knew in our last year that we wanted to launch a studio together.
Mhm.
And we said, well, if we're going to do that, we definitely need some clients.
Mhm.
So we tried to spin our internships that we had both done, like in our last year of school, or our last 2 years of school,
Mhm.
spin those relationships into clients that we could provide design services to them via an independent studio.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So it was not in the days where you could go out and do an entertainment design studio that
Yeah.
really didn't exist at that time. So we were doing industrial design, and my focus was more sort of styling side, so transportation designer, and
Mhm.
Neville he was a product designer.
Yeah.
So to be honest, when you're just starting a studio, you do any job you can get,
Yeah.
basically. So
Yeah.
you're not when you start and launch a design consultancy,
Yeah.
your concern is keeping the lights on.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I think that was definitely the mentality, and as a result, you need to show sort of as to increase your job opportunities.
Mhm.
Having a broader portfolio was definitely better, but of course, it had to be a broad portfolio up to a certain skill level,
Yeah.
right? So that's always the challenge, is that if you try to do too many things, you don't get it to focus on each subject enough
Yeah.
to really proficient. So it's always going to be, at a certain point, you may just have to like face the music and say, all right, this is a skill set that I'm not going to pick up.
Yeah,
right.
definitely.
And so that one, that's not going to go in our portfolio. It's not what we do well.
Yeah.
I don't have an interest in doing that subject well. And that might be like model building or, using Illustrator versus using Photoshop.
Yeah.
At the time it was those sort of decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely, you start to hone in what you're good at, what you like to do. And then hopefully there's a market there, right, that wants those skills.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's it's part of the journey I'm going through just now with the infancy that I'm in just now with my career. And I think because there's so many things that are easily accessible. I say easily accessible, not easy to learn, but there is a wealth of knowledge for different programs, and I think there's almost a temptation with a lot of young students I've found to want to learn everything. You want to do composite in a Nuke, you want to do Photoshop, you want to do 3D environments in Maya, you want to do After Effects, and you can have a kind of broad sense of those skills across a whole kind of gambit, but I think specialization is a key skill, and I found also that there's a huge conversation that's kind of raged for years, and it's specialization versus generalization, and which warrants more work or better results.
It's tough. It's tough, and it's a double-edged sword basically, because everybody, if you're a specialist, then you'll be at the top of your game and sort of get a lot of offers to do that very specific thing that you love to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't do it to a super high level, like top 10% in the world, then you really limit your options. Yeah. So I think it's a dangerous thing to specialize, unless you're super confident and that you stack up well against the other people in the world trying to specialize in the same subject. Because the thing is, there are very few of those jobs that will allow you to specialize. Yeah. And so I would always say do a balance. Like you need your base skills. Like, well, here's an example. Yeah. When we were in school, we had really extensive model building classes, right? So we'd do clay sculpting, we had wood shop, we'd learn how to use a vertical mill. We'd have all those sort of things. And in a way, we always considered the shop skills as our fallback. Right. That we knew we had proficient model building skills, and every industrial design studio has a model shop at that time. Right. So if you couldn't find your, say, favorite specialized concept job, doing concept design, like everybody wanted to do advanced concepts, right? So everybody wanted to go to an advanced concept studio. At that time, it was usually for car companies in California. And if you couldn't get that job, it's like, okay, what are you going to do now? Yeah. So, because those jobs are very hard to come by. So I always thought a balanced portfolio was better. One, it shows employers that you have broader interests beyond just your singular focus. Yeah. Also, you have a fallback skill set. So for us, the fallback skill set was drawing. Right. Photoreal rendering using traditional media at the time, but it was competent rendering, right? And it was model building. Those are three things that every studio needed an arm, right, to do those things. Like I knew as a fallback, I could always go to a model shop and, sand Bondo or paint a model, So that was kind of always in the back of your mind. You're like, okay, if this all fails on my specialization, hunt, I know I can go build models, right? I know I could go be a layout person or do drawings. So that's kind of your fallback.
Yeah. And then again, I don't know if it's different. Obviously, at the time you were at Art Centre, your education might have been similar to what I'm going through just now, but we find that there's a general broad range of skills. Probably, degrees here are different, so we do an initial kind of 3 years of a BA or a Bachelor's of Arts or Bachelor of Science in my case, and then a 4th year's an honours, but you kind of specialise in that last year. Were you guys the same? Did you kind of pick a specialisation towards the end of your degree?
Yeah, I think all good educational programs are structured that way. So about, say, 2/3 to 3/4 of your education is all on foundation. Right. Yep. And those foundation skills are the bankable skills, let's say. right? Because you know that every studio in the world, whether it's industrial design, entertainment, right, there's a certain set of core skills, and that makes you employable to any of those studios, no matter what the subject matter is. This would be cars, products, right? There's just like a core set that you can visually communicate. You're a good problem solver. You've got good styling skills. You know how to do market research. Like there's all these sort of basic skill sets.
Yeah.
And they revolve around hand skills, but also problem solving and understanding the process. And you can apply that to many, many, many subjects.
Right.
Then we had what was called a senior project. And the senior project was usually your last year of school. Your foundation work is done. Like our program was an 8-term program, 2 terms a year.
Right.
And so you'd say the first 6 terms, 5 or 6 terms were going to be foundation. And then your last, 2 or 3 were all about your senior project. And that's where like take all your foundation skills and knowledge and you apply it to your dream job. Right.
Yeah.
So I totally encourage people to take a shot at it, but don't take the shot like starting in your very first term of education.
Yeah.
Don't undermine your foundation skills by not having an open mind to those other skill sets.
Yeah.
Because it's really nice to have those to lean on. Because also trends change, right? So there may be a hot market for your specific aesthetic or what you love to do right when you graduate.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean like 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road that same market's going to be there.
Yeah. And that was interesting, I think, as well, because moving through Art Centre, you talked about when you left, you didn't want to probably go towards automotive straight away. So at the time when you were doing your degree, were you always having a vision on entertainment, or did you want to cover something else apart from automotive? Because obviously I think at the time industrial design was mostly focused on cars, right?
Well, I mean, no, product and transportation were pretty much equal.
Right.
And probably even product design probably had more companies out there because you could work for a freelance consulting firm or you could go in-house. So definitely more products than cars.
Right.
But there was no entertainment. So one of my classmates tried to pursue it. Nick Pugh, he pursued it. And he went out and he found an effects company, right, Rhythm & Hughes, and got a job there. But you had to have really great illustration skills in addition to being a good designer. And there was no digital rendering at the time, so it was a very, very different job. Still very hands-on, lots of drawing, lots of marker rendering, that sort of thing, gouache, etc. So it was a different period, and it was not really a viable job option at the time. So I was just mainstream industrial design.
Yeah. So I take it, when you've pursued different projects throughout the years, has your portfolio been a balance of entertainment design and industrial, or have you probably favored one or the other?
No, I think early in my career it was definitely all industrial design until about the first 5 years, and then my portfolio really switched to education.
Right.
So I went to work teaching at Art Center at the European campus in Switzerland in '95.
Oh, right, wow.
So I was 28 at the time, and I graduated, it was 5 years out of school. And then one of my, Neville and I, one of our favorite teachers of the time, when we were at Art Center, he had gone over and he was the provost over at the European campus. So he hired us both to come over and teach.
Right.
And that's when we really started getting into teaching foundation courses, which really sharpened our own foundation skills as well.
Yeah.
Like if you ever really want to do a deep dive and understand a subject matter, just try to teach it. So once you're asked to teach it, then you're like, oh, I better figure this out a little bit deeper.
Yeah, because obviously you've had a talk about where when you're teaching someone, you almost have to put it in slow motion sometimes because you're so proficient at the task. You have to try and slow it down to teach someone, in real time.
Yeah, and a lot of it's about repetition as well. So you have to be okay with telling something, explaining something, 9 times.
Yeah.
And that's just part of the process. So, if you don't have the sort of patience for that and to try and communicate it at a really, and I'm not saying it's a simple level, but it's not simple because the subject's simple. It's simple because it's new information to someone.
Yeah.
And when it's new information, that's always the thing. A lot of instructors get bored teaching simple subjects like the foundation skills, like perspective drawing or basic shading.
Yeah.
Say the third or fourth time they've taught that class, they're starting to personally get bored with repeating the same subject matter. But what you tend to forget is that what's changing each time you teach it is that you have a new group of students. And so it's always brand new to that group of students.
Yeah.
So, and that's why it's hard, to be honest, to control educational consistency in a curriculum. Like if you're running a department and you're running a school, and to keep your foundation skills at a really high level, the skills don't actually change, which means you need to have somebody who's willing to teach that like it's brand new.
Yeah, to every student.
Exactly the same, right? Because you want that to be exactly the same every single time it's taught.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's really hard to find those people, those good teachers that can have a passion and an energy for the same subject matter, term in and term out, and realize that what the difference is the individuals in the room, and that's tough from a management standpoint.
Yeah, and I think it's a difficult thing where a lot of the people I've seen who are passionate and want to teach are usually reluctant to go back to teaching because they want to they want to exude that passion in a project. They want to go into work in a studio or work on a gig. And again, with you having a passion for design and illustration at the time, and because you've went to Art Centre, you've helped some studios write their diploma program. You've been in education and involved in education as a kind of big chunk of your career. So, what is it about education that drew you to it? Was it a feeling of giving back? Did you just like helping people? Was there a mix or?
No, there is a mix, and I think it has to do with I have a little bit of family history in education. So my dad was a teacher for a long time,
right?
But he's also a practicing illustrator and fine artist,
right.
And he would also teach figure drawing and illustration classes at some of the Oregon State universities.
Yeah,
and so at that level, I always had sort of a knowledge of it. And then as I did some family research, I found that even further back, some of my relatives also were involved in education.
Was that the Scottish ones? Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, my great. Let's see, how many greats? Let's see. Dad, grandfather, great grandfather came from Glasgow.
Oh, wow.
And my great grandmother came over with him, was from Edinburgh.
Oh, wow.
So I have on both sides, they both were from there. And I'm only like 4 generations back.
Yeah. We helped start your country. A lot of people don't know that.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's all the brilliant engineering knowledge that came out of Scotland. We stole that as it came over. So.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of things that came from Scotland. I think even the invention of the TV, which blows people's mind because it's such a huge part of your American culture, the TV. So.
I know. Oh well, no. There's just like this amazing list of inventions that came out of from Scottish inventors. It's fun. It's fantastic. Because I visited, as you know, when I was there about 2 years ago, I visited a bunch of museums.
Yeah. Me and Scott met for the first time in the Edinburgh Museum in the main drag, and sat and talked design while he signed my how to draw book. That was an interesting afternoon. Shout out to Doug as well, who was there, the other guy. We've conversed since we kind of met up that day. But
good.
Yeah. So the Scottish roots kind of bled into your family through teaching. But I remember actually hearing, I think, one of your early interviews where you talked about your dad. Buying you and your brother, I think, was it, sketchbooks at Christmas and telling you to fill them constantly?
Yeah, exactly. Yep, that happened. That was one of our yearly gifts, which is at Christmas, a new sketchbook. Yep. We didn't have a lot of pressure that, if we didn't do it, we get whipped or something. So it was up to us, right? So it was really that we had all the creative exposure and access to some of the tools, but it wasn't really pushed on us. So I tended towards it more than my brother did.
Right.
And then the other thing too is that I was a little bit bored with the typical product design or car design, in that I wasn't really that excited about making more stuff at the time, and so I saw a way that through education and teaching that I could stay connected to the process and the invention part of doing design work.
Right.
And that's what I loved more than anything.
Yeah.
And so I loved the mental exercise of doing the research, trying to align with a user group that was not yourself,
Yeah.
and then trying to invent solutions for those groups of people. And
Yeah.
so teaching allowed me to be connected to the process without the end result of creating more stuff that, in a lot of cases just ends up in landfill.
Yeah, totally. No, I can understand that, and yeah, I think it's almost a tough subject, like you said, because you're trying to reinvent that almost all the time to a new audience. And then I think that kind of brings us on to the next subject quite well, which is a thing that I've experienced. I think because I'm probably almost smack dab in the middle of the process of a brick and mortar education in a school versus a lot of the online learning that's now exploded. Guys like Mache and Ash and Mark, moving stuff into Learn Squared and CubeBrush and obviously Sin Studios, a lot of people like that, Nomon, Schoolism. These things have just, in the last 5 or 6 years exploded on the
Yep.
internet. And I suppose you have an experience of both. And again, like I said, earlier when we were talking about it, looking to demonize schools or anything, but how do you feel the future is now shaping between those two sets of schools, one being brick and mortar and one digital?
Um,
I know it's not an easy question to answer, but
well, no, I think that there's pros and cons on both sides.
yeah,
So I would say that there's no ideal path.
yeah,
It's different for different individuals.
yeah,
I think it's fabulous for people that are interested in the subject matter that now they have the resources, no matter where they live in the world.
yes,
They have the access has gone way up, right?
yeah,
So, I know a lot of students around the world who've like picked up my 2 textbooks and watched a bunch of other videos. Maybe they chime in on, they take classes on, Schoolism or other online things like Gnomon, and they've been able to develop enough of a portfolio to actually go out and get a job and launch a career
yeah,
um, in this subject matter. So I know that it actually works
yeah,
remotely. And now with places like ArtStation, right,
mhm,
they have job postings every week, and so
yeah,
you can actually learn remotely, build a portfolio, and network on a place like ArtStation, and actually, launch a career.
yep, yeah,
Now, that said, that is a much steeper learning curve and a much tougher path than if you join a bunch of like-minded individuals in a classroom setting, all
mm,
striving to accomplish the same goal.
yeah, yep,
So I think that's the strength of sort of brick and mortar programs,
mhm,
is the networking and relationships that you establish
mhm,
with other people that will also be working professionals.
yeah,
And you're going to get almost everybody I know, to be honest, in the entertainment industry gets their jobs because of the network,
yep,
um, not because they had an amazing portfolio up online and they got it sort of cold call style.
yeah, totally, yeah,
So it really still is very much sort of who
mhm,
network. That's why the network still has a huge amount of value
yeah,
versus just learning those skills online. Um, and there are ways to break into that network, online as well by,
mhm,
social media, et cetera.
mhm,
But it's tough. It's much, much tougher than if you enroll somewhere. And also, it takes a lot longer to learn those skills um, when you don't have somebody critiquing your work on a weekly basis.
the reflection, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and so the critique is a really big, big part of learning what is the job like when you're working in a studio.
yep,
And that's something that if you're developing a portfolio by yourself,
mhm,
is you can't replicate.
yeah,
And you could say, "Oh, I got an online critique from these people." It's like, it's different. It's different
yeah,
than a face-to-face.
yep,
And then it's different in a face-to-face where you're asked to make changes and come back a week later, and then those changes are critiqued, right? And
yes,
then you do that for 14 weeks in a row, and you do it for like 4 years in a row,
mm,
right?
yep,
Then the sort of level of intimacy you have with the creative process and how not to take critiques personally,
yeah,
uh, I think it professionalizes the presentation of your work and your ideas.
yeah,
And not only that, you practice presenting your work to a group of people in person.
yep,
And that can't be underestimated either. So
oh yeah,
I think those are they're like things that don't show up when you're looking at that just learning the skills.
Yep.
People tend not to talk about all the peripheral things that really are key in landing and keeping a job and establishing positive relationships and contributing, to the success of a team.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, and I think that's something I experienced when I interned at Access Studios in Glasgow, because my career in the entertainment industry before then had just been through education and talking to people online. But I think the day-to-day being in the studio, it does drive you further, and I think it's something like you said you can't experience when you're learning online, where you're almost, I've heard so many guys who worked freelance for years, and then they go into a studio, and when you're sitting next to the guy across from you, and you're looking at his monitor, looking at the work he's doing, and it's better than yours, it then drives you to push to do better work, and that's something that you don't really get with an online learning facility where you're in this bubble almost of your own work, right?
Yeah. Yes, it's true. That said, though, it's incredible to have the online resource, which didn't even exist, at all when I was in school. So now it's amazing that even though it's a different experience, it can still get you through. A big chunk of the foundation skills can be mastered outside,
Yes.
because that stuff just doesn't change. To be honest, it's either right or it's wrong.
Yeah.
And that is, again, better to have a group or a mentor situation where somebody can correct that stuff. And that's why I think like a schoolism online program is really a really high end experience.
Yes.
Where you get critiques on every assignment you do.
Yeah.
So I would look, if you're going to try and do it all online, look for that high level experience of the feedback loop. The feedback loop is critical.
Yes.
Building your skill sets. And so look for that one if you're going to try to don't only go. And if you can only afford the free one, fine, just go and just soak it all up and do as much as you can. But at some point, you've got to get community, exposure
Behind you. Yeah. And I think it's also good where I think it's mixed as well with places like 10,000 Hours and Level Up, where you can obviously have that thing posted out to the mass and then get feedback, but I think it's difficult in those respects as well, because a lot of these places, not everybody you're getting critique from is a critique that's warranted, because they sometimes aren't in a professional position or haven't had any industry experience. It's more just a general feedback kind of thing. So I think what's good about these specialised courses in places like Schoolism and Learn Squared is you're then interfacing with people in the course, or the guy who's teaching the course or girl who is specialised in that field. Like I know Max Berman, who I spoke to not long ago in the podcast, he just recently launched last year a map painting course on Learn Squared, and part of the experience was the mentorship, where he would give you your weekly assignments, and then he would be feeding back, critiquing that, and because he's an industry vet, he that that response and that critique is high level, because he's high level. You know what I mean? So
well, and not only that, he will critique you with context. So
yes.
For instance, he would maybe give you a very specific assignment, and maybe there was a time constraint to it, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then even though you might write that in the description and you post it up to a community site looking for feedback, nobody's really going to take that into account when they critique your work.
Yeah.
And so you're going to get all these critiques that maybe are totally irrelevant because you did it fast, right? So they'll critique you just based on what they're seeing, but not in the full context of what you were asked to do.
Yep.
Versus the person that actually gave you the assignment, they're going to know the context.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really difficult to find great feedback, online.
Yeah. No, it's 100%. It's I think.
And I'm not talking like I'm talking broad online, like just with open communities, not the focused online, of course, with a mentor and instructor is totally different.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's one of these things, Scott, where I find that that answer was great, obviously, but I think it's one of these things that you talked about, how there's a personal journey, and I think it's more seen now time and time again, where for a lot of people I've interviewed in this podcast, no one has the same origin story. So everyone has got to the place where they are now through a different path. Like there's no one defined means. Yeah. Like even Max Berman, talking to him, I remember him talking about when he opened an actual phone book and just phoned every studio in the phone book till he got to the Zs. So, yeah, I mean, like that's something that I've only heard through him. I've never heard of people picking up a phone or
Yeah,
anything at the time.
I've heard of other people that just, yeah, they put together a portfolio, they come to LA and they just start knocking on doors. So
Yeah.
I definitely know people that have been through that same path.
Yep.
But it's interesting. There's lots of different ways, and it's important for people to understand that there are lots of ways to all end up in the same studio together.
Yeah.
So, you know, I agree completely. There's not just one way,
Yeah.
but there definitely you can help yourself um, by picking, smarter ways. Let's say.
Yeah. So there's the motto kind of that a lot of people know, whereas it's not work hard, it's work smart. So,
Yep.
you don't have to pull 12-hour days if the 6 hours you learn is efficient. You know what I mean? Like, there's paths where you can waste a lot of time. I think I was listening to a guy, Shadi Safari, who worked at Naughty Dog. He was saying that there's a talk he does called I think it's the rule of increasing awesomeness, where he talks about how you can get to a specific point of painting and skills without doing stuff like like photo bashing or 3D, and that traditional route can also work, but those skills will help you get to that point quicker. So the smarter working nowadays, I think, is what's more sought after than just the grinding long hours. Does that make kind of
Oh
sense?
yeah,
Or yeah,
yeah. There's no like process police
yeah,
that like walk around the studio and say, "Oh, you can't do it that way. You can't work faster." No, you need
yeah.
you need to do it the old way.
Oh yeah,
Going to be slower and takes a greater set of hand skills or something.
yep,
No, it isn't that. It's a romantic idea,
yeah,
but for production, it's not a realistic idea. So,
yeah,
uh, but you will see that with all the shortcut ways of doing things,
yeah.
it's no coincidence that the people that usually have the best end result
Hmm.
also have the best foundation skills.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's a huge thing. I mean, you could probably talk about that forever, but even just briefly, foundation skills. I mean, you know yourself, you published 2 books in them. How important are they? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think it's a way of thinking and visualizing
Yeah.
actually. So if if you have to use traditional media, for instance, and there's no Command Z, there's no layers,
Yeah.
you have to actually pre-visualize the image in its end result
Yep.
in order to build it with the medium that's really unforgiving.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is like sketching with a black Sharpie, ink pen
Yeah.
on a white piece of paper,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
right? You have to pre-visualize the line before you commit to the line because as soon as you commit to it, you're done.
Yep.
And it's actually the benefit of doing that drawing is actually making those connections in your brain to pre-visualize the result.
Yes.
And then it doesn't matter what tool you use after that. What matters is that you've made those mental connections
Yeah.
to start to pre-visualize how something is built,
Yep.
how it looks, how it will appear on an image. And that's actually the real advantage of learning those difficult skills.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I saw it. Before I actually kind of initially heard of you, I was watching the FCD channel on YouTube, Feng, and Feng,
Yep.
talks about one of your students. He talks about the process of not erasing and using a bi-roll at the time to get solid lines down, and not mucking about with your sketches, keep them loose. And I think it's all a foundation of what you taught, right? It's that process of being confident in your line work with design.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the line work and all that stuff comes later, but it's really just, it's thinking on paper, right? And it's just fast problem solving.
Yeah,
Then
yeah,
it's super unforgiving, right? And that's the fun thing about that we were talking earlier about the Inktober stuff before we started recording today.
yeah,
But that's the exercise as well of that is that if you're doing traditional inking,
mhm,
usually you have a pencil underdrawing or something, and so
yeah,
that becomes much more about the hand skills of inking. But if you just straight up sketch with black ink,
yeah.
it will really force you to pre-visualize.
Yeah, yeah. And again, we'll probably just what we'll do now is take a short break. We'll hear from our sponsors, which is Procreate, and we'll get back into it.
Great.
Now at Digital Artcast, we'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor Procreate. Procreate is an Apple Design, award-winning digital painting and illustration solution designed exclusively for iOS. Procreate allows you to create professional-grade artworks wherever you are, with an advanced dual-texture brush engine, a robust layering system, and groundbreaking canvas resolution, all for only £9.99. You can find Procreate 4, the new release, through the App Store on your iPad, or learn more at www.procreate.art. Remember to leave a comment on YouTube or leave us a review on iTunes to be in with a chance of winning a copy of Procreate 4 for free. That's right, free. Thanks again to the Procreate team for sponsoring our podcast. Now, back to the episode.
And so we're back. So thanks again to Procreate for sponsoring the podcast. And yes, Scott. So, Inktober was an interesting time for you because I've been trying to get Jake Parker on the podcast for a while to talk about him, kind of bringing Inktober to life. But
oh yeah, that'd be great. That'd be a really cool podcast. You should do that.
100% try to get that nailed down. The thing he always talked about was the consistency it gave people of doing a task every day. And obviously you've just recently published a book of your last 2 years worth of Inktober's. So what drew you to it initially, or kind of how has your take been on the Inktober challenge?
Well, I came at it a little bit different angle because I'm not a comic book guy, so I'm not really into the inking skill set was not what drew me to it. What drew me to it was the setting a goal for a period of time and then trying to meet that goal. And of course it was drawing, specific. So that was appealing because you never stop learning and you never stop trying to strive to take your craft to the next level. And so having a community and sort of a collective consciousness about trying to focus on your skills for a period of time and push them to a new level, that was really what was most appealing. So I did all my work in ink, but I would use, this more my set of tools that I would like more, which was like, do a very light marker block in, and then pick up an ink pen to work on top of that. So, but they're all still permanent ink marks. It's just a slightly different set of tools. But mine were more like design sketches that were exploring versus having, a pencil design drawing and then inking it as an inking sort of illustrative style.
Right. Yeah.
I wasn't as interested in the illustrative style as I was the daily routine of trying to meet a goal. So I think that was the fun part, was trying to see if I could do that, and establish that routine. And then what the nice thing that comes out of that, if you can do it, is that you have this nice sense of accomplishment, at the end of a month.
Yep.
And then I always knew in the back of my mind, hey, this is original content that I own, which is fun. That in the future date, then I could publish into a little sketchbook. Yeah. So it's twofold. One, I think on the originality side and ownership side, you're not trying to derive creative satisfaction from your day job.
Yep.
So you are your own art director. You get to pick any direction and subject matter and thing that you want to explore in your drawings. That's really a fun exercise, and I think everybody should have a little bit of that, because on the production side, the real day job is not that. The real day job is a yes job, right? Yes, it's creative, it's fun, you get to use, it's better than digging a ditch, that sort of thing. For a job, it's a good job, but at the end of the day, you're still creating a product for, maybe a large company. And, that large company has shareholders, and all those decisions you make in the studio are about the success of that product. And when you try to make that daily job your only source of creative satisfaction, I know a lot of people that get very, very frustrated with trying to get that to happen.
Yeah, 100%. I think it was recently as well where I undertook a challenge similar to Inktober, where my kind of dream job was working at Blizzard, so I made myself a challenge of studying one of the Hearthstone cards or the illustrations every day for a whole month, and I managed to do it. And I found even that skill set, it was producing me, or making me, sorry, do something every day, and it almost had driven me more to do more work every day. Once I finished my study, I would go on to be more productive in the rest of my day, because it creates a routine of thinking and executing daily, which I think is the whole point of Inktober. Yeah,
it's this very results-oriented, experience.
And then again, when you were making the book, and you finished your kind of Inktober challenges, I seen also that there was a crossover as well where you kind of dived back into Grimroad, even just slightly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Was that?
Because I actually had a lot of requests on the while I was doing the Inktober
Mhm.
to do tutorials because I'd sort of stopped doing them on my YouTube channel,
Yeah,
just as a function of time mostly.
yeah,
Um, and so I said, oh, I'd sort of gotten into this groove on doing motorcycles a little bit.
yeah.
Um, so I decided I would jump in right after Inktober once my skills were sort of warmed up.
Mhm.
Then it was an easy jump to go back in and do some tutorials on subjects that I may not have done in the past,
Right.
just because I'd been drawing them a lot.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was the opportunity. And I just had a little bit of downtime for 2 or 3 weeks
Right. Yeah,
right after. So that was good.
yeah. And I mean, did you feel there was a nostalgia kind of kick there when you went back into the tutorial side of it? Did your
Yeah,
teaching
it
kind
was
of come
fun
through?
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. And again, for me, that's kind of a fallback exercise in a way.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
looking at my own career,
Yeah.
now I left education in the context of I no longer work at Art Center. I don't teach a lot of workshops anymore,
Yeah.
and I stopped doing that. Yeah, I left Art Center about 7 years ago, roughly seven and a
Yeah.
half,
Wow.
and I did, and that was really to finish the books. So right after I left there, then I finished How to Draw, How to Render.
Right.
So that was about 3 4 years ago. 3 years ago, How to
Mhm.
Render, and since then I've been working on top secret stuff. So, but jumping back to the education for me, like
Mhm.
model building in a way, education for me, from if I look at my own career, is something I know I could always go and do, and I enjoy.
Yeah.
So it was kind of fun to return to that, and that's what I would do if all my other top secret stuff falls apart. I'd probably return to education.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't fall apart though, Scott. That's the
I,
hope
I
anyway.
hope not. I
Yeah.
hope not.
um. So I guess I'm probably just wondering as well because you've spent so much time with students and seen so many people's careers flourish at this point into entertainment. Do you feel there's kind of one piece of advice? I mean, it's hard to nail it down into one thing, obviously, but it's something that you could probably give on to people who listen to this podcast. Who a lot of them are students who find what is the first step I take, or the next step, or how do I carve my own path into the industry. Is there any advice for just a generalization of good advice basically to get into the industry? Is what I'm looking
Um,
for.
yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, there are always going to be good candidates with good skills.
Yeah.
Um, and if a studio manager has an option
Mm.
of should I pick the people that have roughly equal skills, or maybe even one person's skills are a little bit better, but I can see that they're going to be high maintenance and a little bit difficult to work with,
Yeah.
versus the other person who's very pleasant, and it's going to be really enjoyable to be around that person.
Yeah.
You know, who do I want to be around? Who do I want to give the
Yeah.
job to?
Yeah.
And I can tell you from personal experience, the one that you want to work with is the one that is pleasant to be around. So I think it's not so much about students picking a path or defining a path. It's
Mm.
more about uh, personality,
Yeah.
to be honest. Um, and I would much rather have like a B-level student, or say employee,
Yeah.
that has curiosity, right,
Mhm.
passion,
Mm.
actually like to do the work, right. That's
Yeah.
where what they enjoy doing with their time,
Yeah.
uh, and that they're really nice. So um, for me, it's more about working on you know your own personal, your own, who you are as a person.
Yeah.
uh, and don't think that just because you do amazing kick-ass work, that that's going to ensure that you have an amazing, kick-ass future. So
Yeah. Totally.
it doesn't work that way. It's only going to maybe gets your foot in the door,
Yeah.
but if you don't keep an open mind and
Mm.
willing to learn and willing to work hard and show curiosity and passion for whatever the subject is,
Yeah.
you're not going to last very long. So
Yeah, I mean, definitely 100%. I've seen it in people. I mean, and honestly, I've not really seen a lot of it, but even some of the best guys in the industry that I've initially met, like even my first interview I done way back, Titus Linter, who at the time had just finished working with Ubisoft, but he was a big name in the industry, and a lot of people knew his work. The first time I met the guy, well, firstly, obviously, he gave up his time to talk to me on the podcast, so that was great. And then when I first initially met him at Industry Workshops 2 years ago, he was just so nice. He was, like a regular guy. Like, he didn't really take the whole thing in his head that he had worked in these big projects, or he had this kind of career behind him already at such a young age. And yeah, it's just been great, I think, to see people in this industry being so polite and so willing to give up time and talk, and it's almost like a family. Once you get to know an initial core of people that
Yep.
work well together, it's great because you help each other out. That's what you do, and it's been great for
Exactly.
me as
Yeah.
a student. So yeah,
Yeah. So know that, and your sort of politeness and willing, to have an open mind and work with people needs to be genuine and authentic, because you won't be able to sustain it
yeah,
if it's not.
no, totally,
And always keep an open mind towards always learning and trying new techniques, and pushing yourself to improve your skill sets.
yep,
Because in the future, 10 years down the road, you may get a job offer because of who you are as an individual.
mm,
Uh, when all things being equal, there are probably people that have better skills, but you really get, invited on a job because of your personality.
yeah, yeah, no, 100%. And I've seen it, time and time again, where people have been patient with people and reached out and been polite about it, and it's maybe take a few months for people to get back to them, or there's been a slight delay, but the work does come. I mean, even initially, I just got my first job in the industry in November. I just reached out to a guy I'd networked with, and just said to him, I know you're working on a project. I'd be really happy to get involved. I'm really, really keen on what you're doing with the title, and if anything, if I could help in any way, it'd be great. And I just waited, and Nick got back to me and offered me an art test, which I done, and then he was happy with that, and then yeah, I got started. So I think it's just about being persistent and being patient and being polite. So it's like the three P's for me. You know what I mean? So there's a yeah, 100%. It's just general life lesson, Scott. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. It's just like at one level, it's just that simple, you
Yeah.
know.
Hmm.
So have an open mind, be open to education, keep trying to perfect your craft and pushing your skills, and along the way, try to make friends.
Yeah, 100%. And then again, this is an interesting question I wanted to pose to you, because so many people, have talked about your book or your two books. The books that I've kind of set the standard for a lot of people in teaching and foundation skills. A lot of people, even when they ask me now for advice on how to start in design, or what to look on for books, I always point them to your two books, along with
Oh,
a few others. Yeah, and of course, no. But on the flip side, moving forward, I don't know if it's something you've given a great thought, but I'd love to hear your opinion on. Is there books that you would recommend that aren't your books, or anything to do with Design
oh
Studio
yeah, yeah,
Press? Yeah,
yeah. There's a whole bunch.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, the one of my old students just came out with a book on the creative process.
mm,
So I think his book is fantastic complement to, once you have some drawing skills and rendering skills, then how do you think?
right.
So
Who's
his
that?
book is Friedlin Bessert. It's on the Design Studio Press website,
Right,
on the creative process. I think
right,
it's called Creative Strategies.
right. Yep.
Um, that's a great little guidebook for anybody who wants to understand how to become a better designer.
Cool, cool.
And of course, then there's a whole bunch of people, most of which are other Design Studio Press books, because we've tried to target from a sort of high level educational perspective who are the best in the world to work with. So
Right.
people like Nathan Folks has a book now,
I love Nathan's work. Yeah.
and there's just like, yeah, we have 87 books in print now, and so you're going to
Wow.
find sort of the best of the best on that side of it.
Yeah.
Things that are not related to other Design Studio Press books
Mm.
tend to be more about philosophy and science
Okay.
for me.
No, no, that's
Uh,
interesting as well. I'd love to hear what you think about that, because I've
so,
just I've just
so
recently gone to meditation. So.
yeah, so one that I just finished, my wife and I both read it this whole last year in 2017, called The Daily Stoic.
Okay.
And so that I thought that was a really great. It's like one philosophy lesson each day.
The Stoic stuff. Yeah, I've heard about that a lot. It does seem like an interesting path. Yeah.
So we just read that for the whole last year. That was fun. We're actually rereading it again this year. It's just a quick read at breakfast sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that quite a bit.
Grand.
Yeah. So
no. I don't know if there's anything else beyond that, but yeah. Even science. I mean, I found that I actually just picked up Neil deGrasse Tyson's
oh, yeah, I love him. He's amazing.
Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. Like I just looked into that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I gotta get that.
Yeah, that's a good read. Definitely a good read. And I think also, again with me, try start with stuff like meditation and then a bit of calmer mind. I've been trying to get books on stuff like Stoic Buddhism, more philosophy books. So yeah, I think that's also a good life lesson, right, for just a general well-being. But I think it does help in art because your mind does race a lot in design, so it's good to be able to switch it off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, have you found that? Have you found that with your work balance, because your work is so intense sometimes, because you work on such big projects, do you find that it's almost been a necessity to have that side as well, that balance?
Yeah, I got to keep the balance. For me, it's cycling. So
Right.
getting out on my bike like three days a week,
Uh-huh.
that helps a lot.
Yeah. And then building your car as well, is that still
Yeah, my
ongoing?
truck. Yeah, my truck is ongoing. Yeah, it sat for about. I did actually a lot of work this last summer on the interior, but it's been sort of sitting until my piggy bank fills back up again, and then I can start it up. So it's been a slow kind of grind because my other top secret stuff has been a lot of startup company things, which
Right.
putting in sweat equity, so no paycheck.
Yeah, totally. No, I mean that's great that you're setting up these future endeavors for yourself, but yeah, so I mean it's an interesting site where there's just not enough time to talk to you, Scott, because I think a lot of people, your life has been so diverse with people you've interacted with or things you've done in your career. But I mean, I suppose I would just want to ask before we go, is there any one project that you've done in the past that has stood out to you, and maybe why?
Well, for me, it would be the two educational books.
Right.
Probably, I mean, Design Studio Press sort of as a highlight, like sharing the creative process, publishing student work as part of that endeavor, and my own work and friends' work.
Yeah.
But then probably the two educational books are something I feel really good about. Sort of in the end, not getting too philosophical, but things that get left behind. I feel
Yeah.
good about those as products.
Yeah. I think even
But,
James Gunn.
maybe when you post this up, if people have questions, a Q&A, then we can do another one and we can answer the questions that people post on the
Oh yeah.
comments
Oh,
section.
that would be great, Scott. Any more time with you is fantastic. Yeah. Well, you heard it here, guys. Scott's willing to do a wee Q&A. I know we've actually got.
Put the questions in the comments section, and then in a few weeks or a month, then we can address those questions.
Yeah, that would be fantastic, Scott. Thank you very much for offering that.
Sure.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. I don't know how to end this podcast because it's been incredible. It's just been an absolute pleasure talking to you again, Scott.
Oh yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
No, nice to hear the accent. So
Yeah. Are you planning to come back to Scotland at any point, or?
not right now,
Yeah.
but we really enjoyed it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's beautiful there.
No, I think our tagline at the moment with the Scottish Tourism Board is the greatest small country in the world. And I've been to a lot of places, and I feel that yeah, Scotland does have that thing that a lot of places don't. And I don't know if it's because I was born and raised here, but yeah, the Scottish people are a hardy people, and they come from good stock. So yeah,
Not only that, I love the inventiveness. I mean, I love the when you really dig deep on how many things and the quality of engineering and thought and invention
yep.
culturally. It's just great.
Yeah, and I think it's good as well because we just greenlit a project. Well, the government did. We were building this $1 million movie studio in Edinburgh, or just outside Edinburgh, because the hope is that there will be more entertainment design coming to Scotland. You know, because the Avengers just filmed here, the Infinity War thing. They done a bit in Edinburgh train station. So the Scottish government's trying to make that a bigger incentive for companies to come and film here.
Very cool.
Yeah, well, they're trying to make it. I think Scotland the cultural hub for entertainment and music by 2020. So yeah, a lot more great developing things coming in the years to come. But yeah, so no, you need to come back sometime at one time and
I got to come back get some haggis.
Yeah,
So.
definitely. Yeah, I want to just see the best place in town.
Good. I had it 3 times when I was there 2 years ago.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. People give it such a bad rep, but
It was like surprisingly good.
yeah,
So.
yeah. No, it's good. It's good. So yeah, again, it's just to thank you, Scott, for coming on.
Oh, sure, my pleasure.
Yep. And again, guys, Scott was saying leave some comments. We'll get to a Q&A hopefully down the line. And then a game of Procreate, just to kind of shout out, the guys give away free codes every month on the podcast. I've never had any comments yet, but hopefully getting towards 1,000 subscribers, we might start getting some activity. So if you guys comment below on why you want to win a copy of Procreate, I'll pick a random winner and give you guys a free code. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thanks again to Scott for coming on, and
Sure.
I'll speak to you guys later. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.